In Hollywood, some moments have been so explosive that actors and celebrities have ended up in real fights, screaming matches, insults, and even physical altercations that went down in history. One of the most intense, regrettable, and tense cases took place in the late 1990s. Jamie Foxx was still seen as a TV comedian, trying to make a name for himself as a serious actor. His dream opportunity came with the filming of Any Given Sunday, under the demanding direction of Oliver Stone. But Foxx couldn't let go of his comedic persona. He kept cracking jokes and making sarcastic comments, especially aimed at LL Cool J, who was also making his debut in a dramatic role. What started as friendly teasing quickly turned into a minefield. The actor was no longer laughing, and instead was building up a silent rage that was bound to explode. During an intense scene that required physical friction, Jamie Foxx threw a real punch, but what came next was brutal. LL Cool J stared at him with cold fury, and with all his pent-up anger, told him, "For everything I love, there is nothing you can do to stop what's about to happen to you." Moments later, he knocked him down with a single blow. The fight broke out with such violence that it completely froze the production crew. According to several witnesses and rumors, the Miami police had to be called in to stop the situation. The outcome was dramatic. Foxx ended up hospitalized, knocked out, with his tongue split open, requiring 16 stitches. Both actors were forced to bury the hatchet in order to finish filming, although the tension never truly went away. The truth is, they can barely look at each other without recalling that cinematic brawl. The fight was so brutal that it remains one of the most notorious on-set conflicts in Hollywood. But the next case was a worldwide scandal, broadcast live to millions of viewers at the Academy Awards. During the ceremony, Chris Rock, true to his provocative style, made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head without knowing, or perhaps ignoring, that she was suffering from alopecia. At first, the camera caught her husband Will Smith laughing, but something changed just seconds later. Will, with a completely different expression, stood up, walked onto the stage, and slapped Chris Rock live in front of millions of viewers. And in case there were any doubts that it was real, he made it crystal clear with a furious shout from his seat.
Wow, dude!
Yeah.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your mouth!
I'm going to, okay?
The consequences came quickly. The Academy banned Will Smith for 10 years from all official events. His image, once synonymous with charisma and professionalism, was permanently stained. Although he later issued public apologies and gave interviews trying to explain his reaction, Will Smith's reputation has never been the same. The Oscars incident showed how a single impulsive moment can destroy decades of work and reputation in just seconds. But when it comes to tensions and rivalries that have marked the world of entertainment, few are as intense and legendary as the one between Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal, two action icons with opposite styles and personalities who sparked debates and passion among fans. What happened between Van Damme and Seagal completely got out of control, mainly due to the mocking and disparaging comments Seagal made about the actor, questioning his record and titles as a martial artist. In a 1991 interview on the Arsenio Hall show, Seagal suggested that Van Damme had never been a real martial arts champion, something that deeply angered the Hollywood legend.
The other guys, what do you think of Jeff Speakman or Van Damme? Do you know Van Damme?
No.
You've heard of him? Let's start with him, Steven. What do you think of his work? As a martial artist first.
Change the subject.
Well, I mean, because like you guys go back to the martial arts world before you were movie stars, right? I mean, he was like a champion somewhere, and right? I mean, you.
Well, I mean, I just promised all my mentors that I was going to be a good boy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a matter of opinion, that he was a champion anywhere. You know.
This tension finally culminated in 1997, during a party at Sylvester Stallone's house in Miami. Van Damme, tired of the provocations and insults, challenged Seagal to step outside and settle it once and for all. But Seagal, with a nervous smile, dodged the confrontation, making excuses and refusing to go out into the garden. And the incident didn't end there. Van Damme even followed him to a nightclub later that night to challenge him again. But once more, Seagal refused. The feud escalated so much that even Sylvester Stallone later commented that Steven Seagal wouldn't have stood a chance against Van Damme if the fight had actually happened. If you think Van Damme would have beaten Steven Seagal in a fight, hit that like button and subscribe now to keep enjoying our content. Let's continue. Over the years, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal seem to have left their differences behind, even sharing moments together. However, not everyone in Hollywood has managed to bury the hatchet. And a clear example is the rivalry between Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson, which continues to be intense and for now, shows no signs of being resolved. In a franchise built on the idea of family above all, the real war happened behind the cameras. The tension between Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson reached its peak during the filming of Fast and Furious 8. Dwayne, used to a military-like work ethic and an unshakable discipline, could no longer tolerate certain attitudes on set. And he made it clear in an explosive social media post where he called some of his co-stars candy asses and unprofessional. He didn't mention names, but he didn't need to. The entire industry immediately knew he was talking about Vin Diesel. Behind the conflict, there was something deeper. Vin Diesel wasn't just the lead actor, he was also a producer, and according to rumors, he used that double role to impose his will, showing up late, demanding changes, and slowing down production. For someone like Dwayne, that was unacceptable. The tension escalated so much that they refused to share scenes in the final days of filming. The crew had to adjust schedules, rewrite plans, and keep egos apart as if they were explosive chemicals. In later interviews, both threw subtle but sharp jabs at each other, polite words, but with an edge. It was clear the relationship between the two stars was completely broken. The result? Dwayne Johnson chose not to return for Fast and Furious 9, instead launching his own spin-off alongside Jason Statham. Vin Diesel, on the other hand, tried to downplay the feud, speaking about brotherly love and actors' pressure, but the audience didn't buy that version. The rivalry between them remains one of the most talked about Hollywood clashes, but it's nothing compared to what happened between James Franco and Tyrese Gibson on set, where things escalated into punches, and later, harsh words filled with anger and resentment. Filming fight scenes is a real challenge. It requires synchronization, precision, and rehearsal. But what happens when one of the actors just can't control himself? In the early 2000s, James Franco was shining as one of Hollywood's rising stars. In Annapolis, he shared the screen with the up-and-coming Tyrese Gibson. Both characters had to face each other in the ring, so professional advisors were brought in to choreograph every move. But Franco decided to ignore the rules of the game. From the very first rehearsal, his punches were real and dangerous. Gibson, completely shocked, tried to ask him to calm down, to respect the choreography. But Franco kept hitting harder and harder, creating an extremely tense atmosphere on set. And this wasn't just an isolated incident. It happened multiple times during filming. Gibson ended up hating him, and he didn't keep it to himself. In interviews, he even said he wanted to knock his face off. Franco, for his part, explained years later that back then he was too intense with his method acting and didn't know how to disconnect from his characters. He also admitted that he tried to apologize once filming was over, but Tyrese wanted nothing to do with him, and the two never crossed paths again. Tyrese Gibson took it very personally, but not as personal as what happened with Christian Bale, when a director interrupted him, and what followed turned into a true cinematic hell. During the filming of Terminator Salvation, the set was shaken by a storm, and by Christian Bale's screaming outburst, which was caught on tape and quickly leaked, leaving everyone in complete shock, unsure of how to react. Bale exploded at cinematographer Shane Hurlbut, unleashing insults and even threatening physical violence and termination. The reason? Hurlbut had walked across the set to check the lights in the middle of a dramatic scene, blocking Bale's line of vision at that exact moment. The leaked audio revealed more than just shouting. Bale unleashed a torrent of insults, threats, and fury, sounding more like a villain than the leading actor.
You prick! No, don't just be sorry. Think for one second. No! Da-da-da-da like this in the background. What the That's what that is, man. I'm telling you. I'm not asking, I'm telling you. You wouldn't have done that otherwise. Shut up for a second, all right?
Hollywood quickly split in two. Some defended him, citing his extreme commitment to the role, while others saw it as a sign of unchecked ego. Bale was eventually forced to issue a public apology, admitting he had lost control, but also exposing the kind of pressure and mental strain actors can face during high-budget production. But if we're talking about real tension on set, what happened between Steven Seagal and Jean Lebell is simply legendary. A clash of egos, pride, and humiliation that Seagal would never forget. Steven Seagal never seemed to know how to interact with others without using his fists. By the mid-90s, he was an undisputed action star. John Leguizamo, on the other hand, was just starting to make his way in the industry. They crossed paths on executive decision, and before filming even began, Seagal walked onto the set declaring, "I'm in charge here. Does anyone have a problem with that?" Leguizamo, thinking it was a joke, laughed, and was met with a direct strike from Seagal that left him gasping for air. From that moment on, the Colombian-American actor was left with a terrible impression of Seagal. But unbelievably, that wasn't the worst of it. Seagal already had a reputation. He was known for being harsh, often trying to assert dominance on set, and multiple stuntmen accused him of hitting them for real during fight scenes. Leguizamo later recalled another story that stained Seagal's reputation, an incident on Out for Justice. According to him and several witnesses, legendary martial artist and stunt coordinator Jean Lebell, famous for his chokeholds, put Seagal in a submission lock. It's said that Seagal not only passed out, but also lost control of his bladder. Though Seagal denies it to this day, many who were there confirm the story. From that moment, his tough guy image was never the same. And yet, when it comes to egos and rivalries, some clashes started even before either actor became a superstar. One of the most infamous, Sylvester Stallone versus Richard Gere, a ridiculous yet explosive fight that began over nothing more than a stain and ended with insults, physical aggression, and Richard Gere being kicked off of production. In 1974, Sylvester Stallone and Richard Gere were young men hungry for fame, trying to make a name for themselves in the industry. Both were cast in the film The Lords of Flatbush, a drama that promised to propel them into stardom. But from the very first encounter, Stallone felt antipathy toward Gere. He considered him arrogant, pretentious, and far too conceited for someone just starting out. The tension grew day by day, until it finally exploded in the most absurd way. During a rehearsal, when lunchtime arrived, Stallone sat in the back seat of a production car, eating a simple hot dog. Gere showed up with half a chicken covered in mustard, and without saying much, sat right next to him. Stallone then warned him, "If you spill anything on me, you're going to regret it." And well, what had to happen, happened. A few drops of mustard fell directly onto Stallone's jeans, who immediately exploded, elbowed Gere in the head, and shoved him out of the car. Others had to intervene to stop Stallone, who seemed ready to tear him apart. The relationship was already unsustainable, and director Martin Davidson made a drastic decision. Richard Gere was fired from the project, but the resentment didn't stay on set. Years later, at the peak of their careers, they clashed again. Both attended an exclusive party organized by Elton John. Stallone arrived intending to charm Diana, better known as Lady Di, but found her talking with none other than Richard Gere, who was clearly also interested in winning her over. Stallone couldn't stand it. Witnesses like David Furnish recount that both actors were caught confronting each other and were on the verge of a physical fight over Diana. They had to be separated before it came to blows, and this time, Gere had the last laugh. He walked away with Diana as if nothing had happened, while Stallone left the event furious and humiliated. For someone like Stallone, so respected in the industry, being stained with mustard and losing a princess in a battle of egos, it's a story worth telling. And if we're talking about rivalries, hatred, physical fights, jealousy, and tensions that turned a film set into a living hell, we cannot forget what happened between George Peppard and Mr. T. In the iconic series The A-Team, where everything on screen was pure 80s action, behind the scenes a much harsher and very real war was being fought. George Peppard, who played Colonel Hannibal Smith, couldn't handle his jealousy. The true crowd magnet was Mr. T with his unforgettable character B. A Baracus, and that fact consumed Peppard from within. According to witnesses, his resentment had a darker side, racist and sexist attitudes that led him to clash with anyone who didn't fit his worldview. He even pressured producers to fire Melinda Culea, the actress who played Amy Allen, simply because he didn't want a woman on the team. Peppard had a longer and more prestigious career than his co-stars, which made him see himself as the true star of the group. This attitude sparked constant tension, especially with Mr. T. The atmosphere became unbearable. Ego problems and poor communication among the protagonists eroded the team's dynamic. The conflict escalated to the point that, according to various rumors and testimonies, George Peppard and Mr. T may have actually engaged in physical altercations during filming. Peppard, who had served in the U.S. Navy between 1946 and 1948, supposedly once put Mr. T in a submission hold, causing him an injury. There are even claims that he punched him during a shoot, breaking several of his teeth and leaving everyone on set in total shock. The relationship between the cast and George Peppard was always very poor. No one called or sought him out when the production ended, as they all considered him unbearable. However, the following story involving Wesley Snipes and David Goyer is a clear example of how creative differences can transform a promising project into a true cinematic battlefield. During the filming of Blade Trinity, what was supposed to be the epic conclusion of a successful franchise turned into a true nightmare for the cast. The relationship between Wesley Snipes and director David Goyer became so tense and toxic that many described the experience as a cinematic hell. Wesley, frustrated with the creative direction the film was taking, began behaving like a diva of legendary proportions. He isolated himself from the rest of the cast, refused to leave his trailer, and, most bizarre of all, only communicated with Goyer through written notes, which he signed as Blade. Yes, as if the character had completely taken over him. But the worst was yet to come. Amid this already strained atmosphere, the unthinkable happened. Snipes allegedly tried to choke the director during a heated argument on set. Yes, choke him. The crew was horrified, and from that moment on, the shoot became an absolute nightmare. It's worth noting that Patton Oswalt and others have recounted the alleged strangulation attempt, and while Goyer has never denied it, Snipes has categorically rejected the claim. Production members stated that Snipes was unpredictable, explosive, and that his behavior bordered on uncontrollable. The film was eventually completed, but the damage was already done. The scandal not only destroyed the relationship between the actor and the director, but also marked the beginning of the end for the Blade franchise, which lost credibility with the studios. But the following scandals in the industry happened live, right in front of everyone. Actors, fed up with disrespect, had to react and put arrogant interviewers in their place, proving there are limits that should never be crossed. Get ready, because the most intense and scandalous moments in Hollywood are right here in this video about actors who humiliated and confronted disrespectful interviewers live in front of millions.